So first it is worked flat basically up until here. And then we're gonna leave a long end for sewing, seam up the side, and then we're going to start working in the round. So you will learn how to do that. So now let's start. And just a quick note before we start. So when you work in the round, you actually need to work from 2 balls of yarn. So if you only have like one hank or one skein right now, you need to separate them. Let's start by making a slip knot on our hook. And you need to chain in multiples of 3. So for mine, I am going to be chaining 30. That's just what fits my wrist. So I recommend you measure your wrist circumference and you chain in multiples of 3 until you meet your wrist measurement. But you also want to add like a little positive ease. So maybe add like 1 centimeter or a few centimeters. And then when you're done, you're going to want to make sure the chain fits. So go ahead and chain as many as you need, and let's meet it back at the end. Okay, I have my 30 chains, and now let's get ready for the first row. So in Tunisian crochet, you always skip, and also regular crochet, skip the first chain closest to the hook. And here we're going to insert our hook and pull up a loop. And when you are counting your stitches, this first chain here always counts as your first stitch. Just keep that in mind. So go ahead and pick up a loop in each chain bump and pause the video, and then let's meet at the end for the return pass. All right, here we are. Now let's return pass. So to do a return pass, you need to chain 1. There we go, and then yarn over and pull through 2. And you're going to yarn over and pull through 2 all the way down. Now this is our first row, and it is our setup row. So go ahead, yarn over and chain 2, yarn over and pull through 2 all the way down. And then let's meet again. So go ahead, pause the video, and we will meet when we are finished. All right, so this is what your first row looks like. Now we need to start the rib stitch. So the rib stitch follows a pattern of a purl stitch, 2 knit stitch, purl stitch, 2 knit stitch, all the way down. So to purl stitch, you're going to take your working yarn, put it in front of your hook, then you're going to insert your hook into that front bar. Okay, so it's going to look like this, and then you're going to take this yarn, bring it around the back of your hook, yarn over, and I like to hold on to my loop right there, and then pull this loop to the second loop on your hook, and there it is. Now we're going to knit stitch. So there's 2 V's here. You're going to insert your hook into that V right through the middle and pull up a loop. The V's, insert, and pull up a loop. Okay, so let's purl stitch once more. Bring it around, insert into the front bar, bring it back, yarn over, and pull that through. If this is too fast, I will link in the description a slower tutorial on how to do this stitch, or how to do the stitch pattern. So keep purl stitching and do 2 Tunisian knit stitches after the purl stitch all the way down. Your last stitch should be a purl stitch. You're going to want to start with the purl stitch, end with the purl stitch here. And then when you end with that purl stitch, pause the video because I'm going to show you how to work this end stitch. I finished my first ribbing row, and so now here at the end you see you have 2 loops right there. So basically you're just going to insert your hook in between those 2 loops, kind of like how you would a single crochet, and you're going to pull up a loop, and there you go. That is how you work the end stitch every single time. Now we're going to return pass. So let's do that again. Put my hook back on the loop. So to return pass again, you chain 1, then yarn over, pull through 2, pull through 2 all the way down. There we go. So go ahead, pause the video, and let's meet when you have finished return passing. And once you finish return passing, you will have completed your second row. Okay, now let's see how the purl stitch looks when you actually have it going. So you're going to put your yarn around your hook. You're going to insert your hook into this front bar, bring your yarn back around. I guess you can say chain one, or just pull that through, yarn over, pull it through, and pull up a loop. And then here, the knit stitch is just the same. Insert into the V, insert into the V, pull up a loop. So you're going to continue working this ribbed, like knit-like pattern for a total of 5 rows. You can make it longer if you want, but I just made it 5 rows for me personally. So basically you're going to want to just continue working it for your wrist part. And then once we finish the wrist, we're going to start increasing on the ends so we can start increasing for the hands. So go ahead and complete your wrist and then pause the video and let's meet back. Okay, I completed 5 rows. This is enough for my wrist. If you want to make it longer, go for it. And now I'm going to show you how to start increasing. Before we do that, you now have to measure this part of your hand. So instead of measuring it flat like this, you want to spread out your hand quite a bit because your hand isn't going to just stay like this, right, when you're using it. So go ahead and measure the circumference of your hand, like around this way, to see how much you need to increase. So I'm pretty sure mine was like 25 centimeters. So I continued to increase until I reached 25 centimeters on this panel. So you are going to have to kind of keep measuring along. But now I'll show you how to increase. When you increase, you're going to do a Tunisian full stitch. So for this pattern, we're going to increase at the beginning and at the end because we want the glove to kind of split evenly. And to do a Tunisian full stitch, you just insert your hook in between the 2 stitches, in between the gap. So this is our first stitch, right? And then this is our purl stitch. So just insert your hook in that gap in between the 2 stitches and pull up a loop. It's kind of fiddly at first. All right, and then I have to purl stitch into my next stitch. And then just basically continue that ribbed pattern all the way down. And stop when you hit your last purl stitch because then I'll show you how to increase at the end. But basically you'll just be placing another full stitch. Okay, I'm almost at my end here. So this is my last purl stitch. All right, and now there is a gap between my purl stitch and the end stitch. So you just have to insert your hook into that gap and pull up a loop to do the full stitch. And now complete your row by inserting your hook into the end there and pull up a loop. Okay, now, oh, my glove is starting to fall off. You're going to do a return pass. So chain 1, and we have to, basically the return pass is just going to be worked the same way. So you just yarn over and pull through 2, and you will have included your full stitch. Okay, so pause the video and we will work another increase on the next row. All right, so you can see my increase stitch from the last row. It's not pretty, but there it is. That's the full stitch. So basically just keep increasing until you reach that circumference for this part of your hand. So to do a full stitch, now we're going to insert our hook in between our first stitch here and that Tunisian full stitch. So insert your hook and pull up a loop. And now you have to continue the pattern of the rib stitch, basically. So because this is a purl stitch, this needs to be a knit stitch. So it's a little tricky, so just insert your hook in between those two bars for the knit stitch and pull up a loop. Oops, and then you're just going to continue all the way down. And one note here is that this is a purl stitch, right? So the full stitch from your last row needs to be worked as a knit stitch, and then you're going to work a full stitch here in between that full stitch from the previous row and your end row. All right, so basically just keep increasing like this and continue to work the ribbed pattern whenever you have a new full stitch from the previous row. So continue to work this and then pause the video and we will meet to see what we will do for the next part. Okay, so this is what my glove looks like so far. I only ended up increasing 3 times. So now you're just going to work this ribbed stitch all the way up until I guess the bottom part of your thumb here, because once we reach the bottom part, that's where we're going to split. We're going to split it in half, and that's when we're going to start working in the round. Okay, so go ahead and continue to keep working until you reach your thumb. And pause the video. All right, everyone, I reached the length that I need, or that I wanted, for like right below my thumb. So I also made this, so I kind of matched it up. And now what you have to do is we're gonna start working in the round, but now you have to fasten off and leave a long enough tail to sew this together. Just put that there, okay. And then you're going to want the wrong sides facing together like this, and we will start sewing. Okay, now you're gonna make just one panel like the same way for each hand. So when you want to try it on for your right hand, you're gonna want to make sure that the seam is facing your thumb, and for the left hand, the seam is next to the thumb. So just make sure. All right, and now you need to try this on. So I'll just try it on my left hand. Okay, so now you're going to need to make sure that your seam is aligned on the side of your hand, and you need to count in from the seam how many stitches you need for your thumb hole. And let's see, for example, I have, counting this one, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, let's say. Yeah, I'll do 6, and then I'll need to count in 6 on the other side too. And then put your stitch markers and let us meet. Okay, everyone, we finished. We marked our stitches, and now we're going to work in the round. So if you are right-handed, working from right to left, you need to join on the side where the stitch or the seam is on the right side. We're going to go this way. If you're left-handed, you need to join when the seam is on the left-hand side, and you're going to go this way. Okay, so to join our yarn, make a slip knot on your hook, like so, and just insert your hook into the stitch like so. And since this is a knit stitch, I inserted like a knit stitch. If it was a purl stitch, just insert your hook into that front bar and pull up a loop. Okay, now pull this loop through to make a little slip stitch, and there we go. That's our first loop on our hook. That's our starting loop. Okay, now just continue to work the pattern and keep picking up loops until you cannot anymore. And then I will show you how to work in the round, and then you can use this technique to work in the round for any project. So go ahead, pause the video, and continue to pick up loops until you just possibly can't anymore. Okay, I have reached the point where I can't really go anymore. So now you are going to need to bring in another little ball of yarn. And so when we're working in the round, the right side of our work looks like this, but when you want to do the return pass, you have to flip it around like this. Okay, and let's join our yarn on the hook with a slip knot on your hook. If I'm going too fast, you can pause the video. Slip knot on your hook. And then take the slip knot and pull it through like that to secure it, and then chain 1. So this is our beginning chain 1 for our return pass. And now we're going to return pass as normal. So yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, just like that. And a little tip for attention is you want to leave like maybe 4 loops on your hook at the end, because this loop can get a little loose. Go slow, take your time. Yeah, I'm going to stop there. Okay, great. Now continue picking up loops until your next mark stitch. Pause the video and let's meet right there, because that is where we have to kind of join this area for the thumb. Okay, I worked my last stitch into that marked stitch, and now we have to chain to join these. So this is our first stitch here in the round. You can keep moving your stitch marker up so you know, but anyways, we'll take a look at that in a second. So this pattern is in multiples of 3, so you have to chain 3 or 6. I don't think you'll have to chain 9 because that's too big, I think. But try 3 and then try it on and see if it fits your hand. But anyways, chain in multiples of 3. So 1, 2, 3. Great. And now just insert your hook into this first stitch, however it like corresponds. So this is a knit stitch, so I'm going to insert it like a knit stitch. If it were a purl stitch, you would have to purl stitch into that stitch. Okay, and now I want to show you what we do here. So go ahead and finish by just pulling through like the rest of your stitches over here in the return pass. And now I have this chain 3 and it looks weird, right? So you want to chain the same amount of chains as you did down here. 1, 2, 3. And now we need to return pass like normal. So yarn over and pull through those 2 together. Great. Okay, so now continue to pick up your stitches like normal all the way around, and then once you get to back to here, to this other marked stitch, these stitches here, we're gonna meet there and see what we can do here. So go ahead, work all the way around, pause the video, and let's meet back there. Okay, so this is where it gets a little funky. I think I invented this technique because I haven't seen it before. I'm doing it with a raglan right now, but I also thought, hey, I can use it for this. So anyways, let's see what we can do. So my last stitch is, this tension is horrible. Please ignore that. And you're going to work. So this is our next stitch, right? So we know that the one above is also our next stitch because we marked it. So I'm going to do a knit stitch into here. Perfect. Now the whole point of this chain is to just separate the sides, right? But we need to put those chains together. So basically the most important part here is just ending up with 4 extra loops on your hook. So however you want to insert them so there's no holes, whatever you see fit, go ahead. I basically I try to follow the chain, but I mostly fudge it. And so can you. I encourage it. So anyway, let's start fudging through. I can see that this is my first chain stitch. So I'm going to try to get that back bump there. Fantastic. And now you want to find the chain stitch, 1, 2, 3, 4, good, on the opposite chain and go into that back bump if you can. So yarn over and pull up through both of these loops and pull up a loop. We're just trying to join the chains together, so there's no gap there. Okay, now go ahead and do the same. Go into that first chain closest to you, go into the next chain opposite to you, yarn over, pull through both of those and pull up a loop. Good. So I now have 2 extra loops on my hook, and wow, this bottom chain ended up really ugly. So You know what? This is a really great lesson. If you have this really ugly gap here from the bottom chain, just fudge it, like me. Just go around it. Put that bottom chain around like this, pick up a loop, and the next chain. I feel like the top chain, the first chain, or the second chain is really neat. Okay, and then you're gonna pull through, pick up a loop. Fantastic. And again, this is extremely, this loop here is like horrible. So I'm just gonna go around it. Oh, this is like really hard. If it starts getting hard, use your nails. Pick up a loop in this next chain. So maybe your tension won't be as weird as mine, but the tension's all over the place. Okay, so you're gonna yarn over, pull through, and pull up a loop. Great. So you can see here that this is my one knit stitch, not part of the chain. It's like all in a straight line, right? So I have 4 extra loops on my hook. Fantastic. All right, so now we picked up all the extra chains and we need to work into our next stitch. So to do that, find your mark stitch and just, wow, it's right above it. My tension is pretty bad, unfortunately, but my next stitch is a knit stitch, so I will knit stitch into there and go on. So keep picking up your stitches all the way around in the pattern. Yeah, and then let's meet again. Oh, one more thing. Basically, now you need to just return pass. Let's return pass together. Okay. Just like that. So what you should do now is you need to, you need to just go ahead, pick up all the stitches all the way around until you get to your next mark stitch over here, and we will see what we can do on this chain from before. Okay, go ahead, pause the video. All right, so I made it all the way around to my other stitch marker, and I'm gonna follow my stitch marker up and know that this is my last stitch, so I'm gonna knit stitch in there. And now we picked up all of these stitches. These are like basically like your first row. So you need to continue the pattern. Since this is a knit stitch, I will purl stitch into there. And since that was a purl stitch, I will pick up 2 knit stitches into the next 2 spots, and then I will purl stitch into my last one. So I just did 4 extras. And then my next stitch is a knit stitch. Great, and then you will just return pass as normal, and you are all set there. So now for the rest of the pattern, you will just keep working in the round until you reach the desired height. So this, I'm going to need to match my other glove. And so that's all you have to do. And the last row, you'll see it has a nice finish there. That is called a bind off. Okay, so I basically worked all the rows that I wanted, and I returned past until I have one last loop on my hook. So basically you'll just return past all the way down and you'll have the 1 loop on your hook. So I know that this is my first, this is the beginning of my row 6. I did 6 rounds here. I know this is the beginning because I marked my first stitch and I can follow it all the way up. So I worked a complete amount of stitches all the way around for row 6. So now when you have finished, so like if you're curious, like, oh, how do I know where my row begins and ends? You mark that stitch and that's how you know. That's the beginning of your round, okay? So the takeaway is when you have finished working all the way around, as many rounds as you want, before you reach that last mark, your first mark stitch, you need to just return past until you have 1 loop on your hook. So basically for the bind off, we just need to fill in these holes and work a single crochet round. So we have one loop on our hook, right? We're going to insert our hook into our first stitch from the round, like we would for the knit stitch. We're going to yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2 loops. That's our first single crochet. All right, and I'm just going to carry my yarn over. So all you have to do is insert your hook into each stitch and single crochet for a bind off. And for the purl stitches, you're going to insert your hook around that front bar. Okay. And that is a bind off. And you can see how we are closing that gap there. All right, so go ahead and bind off in your rows. And then when you reach the end, you can just slip stitch to that first single crochet that you made. And I just want to point something out. You'll notice that I accidentally made my tension a little loose here and it doesn't look great. So I'm actually going to go back and fix it. So yeah, anyways, continue to bind off all the way around and then slip stitch to that first single crochet. And we'll meet to see what we can do for the thumb. Okay, I finished my bind off row and now we have to bind off here. All right, so this is, yes, let me see. This is my left hand one, so I'm going to join in the back. You can take your stitch markers out. So we're going to bind off in the same exact way, but this is how I like to make my single crochet. First, you're going to make a slip knot on your hook, okay? Then just pick the corner stitch, insert your hook, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2 loops. You just made your first single crochet. And now you will just single crochet, bind off into each stitch around like we did before. It does start to get a little tricky around the sides, but see, like we joined right here, so I'm just gonna again fudge it. That looks good. So I'm a big believer in filling up gaps no matter what you have to do, as long as it looks good. I'll show you what I mean in a second, like when we come to this corner. Okay, so I remove my stitch marker. I'm gonna single crochet bind off into this purl stitch. Great. All right, okay, I can see that my next stitch is right here. That is a knit stitch. So I'm gonna insert there and do a single crochet bind off. Got a little hole, don't really like it. All right, and now this is where it gets a little messy. So I have this annoying, there we go. So this is a stitch, but that loop is like really big, right? This is my stitch here. I don't want to work into it because the space is too big. So I'm just kind of gonna work into this stitch here. I'm just gonna shove my hook in there and make a single crochet and hope it looks good. And it does. Cool. And again, I'm just gonna maybe single crochet here. Good, it does. All right, and now we have come to the part where we chained 4, right? So just insert your hook along into the chain wherever you see fit and single crochet. Maybe go through both. Yeah, there you go. Go through both loops like that. All right, and then again, I'm not going to single crochet into this next stitch here because there's going to be a huge gap. I don't like that. So again, fudge it. What I'm going to do is, this is the next stitch that I should bind off into. I'm going to bind off into this little side stitch here. Fantastic. And then I'm going to just completely skip this hole right there. And this is my first stitch, right? Maybe I'll just slip stitch into that and see what it looks like. That looks pretty good. So I'm going to fasten off. And another thing with Tunisian crochet or crochet in general, oh, I made a little hole here, right? So when I seam this together, I'm just gonna kind of seam all the stitches together in the back. So you can feel free to do that as well. If there are any weird holes, you can go ahead, get some yarn and seam the hole together.